This psalm is eminently prophetic in the most literal sense, as David was speaking not about himself, but about the Redeemer. This is clearly evident from the speeches of St. Peter and St. Paul recorded in the Acts of the Apostles. The title of the psalm itself indicates a momentous meaning that transcends any particular circumstance in David's life. David wrote this psalm with immense prophetic light in a moment of great supernatural inspiration. In it he speaks as one who is hearing the words of another and repeating them. For the Jewish people, often absorbed as they were in human and temporal ambitions, this sublime prayer was like an amazing light lifting them up to higher aspirations. As if the nearer they got to the person of their Redeemer, the more the horizon of heaven was opened to them. Already they could feel the first drops of the dew that would one day fertilize their arid hearts. The most hidden figures of the King of Love seemed to be covered with material symbols, with the most obvious figures evincing a clear prophecy that was, in fact, almost historical. It was as if the sun were no longer obscured by thick, dark clouds, and thus was even more life-giving. The one speaking in the psalm is Jesus Christ, the head of his mystical body, the victim of salvation for all, the light that illuminates every human being. Jesus, who operates the salvation of everyone, takes the place of everyone and exclaims, "Protect me, Lord, for I have hoped in you." Jesus does not consider himself separate from his mystical body. He asks for her preservation, that is, her indefectibility in the midst of human events, where everything is turned upside down and where everything changes. He wants his church to be preserved, and for him to be preserved by the church, so that his mystical body never fails him, nor he ever fail his mystical body. The prayer of the Redeemer, announced prophetically here and made a reality by him in his mortal life, was fulfilled in the indefectibility promised to the church by himself, in the Eucharistic dedication. This was the purpose of the meritorious nuptials with his bride, this the faith of a most sublime nuptial canticle. How does the church's faithfulness to the divine spouse and the spouse's faithfulness to his church reveal itself? It is revealed by the church glorifying and loving God above all things, by her holiness and by her longing for eternal riches. And it is revealed by Jesus Christ in his self-giving love, sacrificing himself in reparation for human weakness. For this reason, he exclaims, "I said to the Lord, you are my God. I find no good apart from you." Jesus Christ had to go before us on this admirable path. He was the first to seek only the Father's glory. He pointed out to humanity redeemed by him the one good to which it should aspire. He speaks for himself, yet expresses what the Christian's call and purpose should be: to recognize and worship God, to seek him alone as the supreme good. The entire program of the life of the incarnate Word is expressed in these words: "I said to the Lord, you are my God. I find no good except in you." But since love for God is inseparable from love for one's neighbor, the Redeemer turns to his saints, his children pilgrimaging on earth, animated by this sublime ideal and exclaims, "As for the saints in the land, they are the noble ones, in whom is all my delight." He calls them his noble ones because they love him, fight his battles, and defend the honor of God. They are united to him in love. They belong to him and are part of his mystical body. Nonetheless, not all people will listen to his voice. There will be those who abandon him and turn elsewhere. There will be those who remain in degradation through their own fault. These do not belong to him. The further they move away from him, the more their miseries and infirmities grow. The Redeemer does not pour out libations of blood with them, meaning he does not participate in their sacrifices and prayers. Indeed, he does not even remember their names, and on the last day will declare that he does not know them. It is evident that this psalm addresses first the saints, that is, those who are part of the Redeemer's mystical body, and then those who do not belong to it or who have detached themselves from it, namely pagans and heretics. These in particular, far from following the paths of life, see their miseries multiplying. They do not participate in the life of Christ and, reprimanded by him, perish miserably. To these prophetic words announcing the reprobation of the wicked, the Church, always faithful to her King and to the path blazed by him, responds by exclaiming, "The Lord is the portion of my inheritance and my cup. It is you who will restore my inheritance." This is the aspiration of the souls united to the Redeemer, an aspiration they are able to achieve through his merits, since he alone can restore the eternal inheritance lost through sin. The Church rejoices in her supernatural election as one might rejoice who, in the division of a piece of land, receives the most wonderful part. The Church blesses God for this grace and acknowledges that he has given her counsel, that is, the discernment to choose him alone, even in the darkness of human detours, and has given her the grace to love him alone. The meaning and connection of the psalm are clearly seen in this explanation. Though he suffered, nonetheless he always enjoyed the beatific vision of God. He saw at his right hand, so to speak, the divinity that was sustaining him, so that he would not be shaken in the storm that was to overwhelm him. For this reason, his heart rejoiced, his soul exulted, and even his body rested in hope, because it was not to be prey to corruption, but was to rise again. He knew the ways of life because he rose before any other. He was filled with joy in the possession of glory. He was filled with delight at the right hand of the Father. The Redeemer prays for the Church, fruit of his labor, marking out for her the program of aspiration to God alone. He distinguishes the true church formed by his saints from the false churches filled with miseries that offer libations of blood, meaning they act according to blood, nature, and passions. The Redeemer speaks again, revealing his hypostatic union with the divine person, saying that God stands before him and at his right hand, delighting in him and supporting him, for he is the fulfillment of humankind. He is the reason for his resurrection. since by means of the hypostatic union he rose from the tomb by his own power, and his flesh did not see corruption. Lastly, the Redeemer speaks of the ways of life, his glory and his delights at the right hand of the Father. He announces his ascension to heaven, marking out for us the path of eternal life and the eternal glorification of his humanity, the first fruits of our glorification, and his exaltation at the right hand of the Father. He is ever living to intercede for us, to be our advocate, in order to, as St. Paul says, to merit for us forgiveness and eternal glory. With this clear and concise overview, it becomes even more evident that David could not have been speaking of himself, and that the psalm does not merely foreshadow the future, but luminously predicts it. This is not a description of a specific circumstance in the prophet's life, but rather a direct illumination prompting him to sing of the future with undeniable clarity. The great gift of redemption is the presence of Jesus Christ in the blessed sacrament, alive and truly with us. It is the nourishment of the soul so that she might not be deterred from the good path. It is the joy of the pilgrim soul, the promise of the resurrection of the flesh. It is because of the Eucharist that the soul is not abandoned to the abode of the dead, that the body is not entirely prey to corruption, as Jesus Christ said, "Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day." For this reason, the Christian soul, gladdened by the company of her King, the prisoner of love, exclaims, "I always see the Lord before me, for he is at my right hand, so that I may not falter. For this my heart rejoices and my soul exults, and even my flesh rests in hope, because you will not abandon my soul in the abode of the dead, nor will you allow your Holy One to see corruption." Redemption is summed up entirely in the magnificent words with which the psalm closes. "You have made known to me the paths of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence. At your right hand are eternal delights." The paths of life are the paths of truth and love marked out for us by Jesus Christ. They are the royal paths that lead to glory and to the immense joy of eternity. As can be seen, this beautiful psalm is a poem bursting forth with blossoms of trust, faith, triumph, and love. It is a poem that meager human poetry cannot know, for human poetry does not know how to capture the secret of life, nor how to shine light and fragrance on our painful pilgrimage. Mere human poetry cannot bring us closer to God, who is our only love, our only hope, our only good. Arrivederci till next time. Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Gesù, pensaci tu.